We are getting ready to go live here, folks. Looks like the feeds are lining up, getting ready to go out across the universe. And I am just waiting for it to populate over here on my computer. Looks like we're getting there. All right. Folks, this is Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures, welcoming you to another episode of Hunting Strategies, my live show I'm doing in partnership with Bowtech. What I've been doing in the beginning here is saying hello to some of the people signing on. We got Jerry on there. How you doing, brother? George, Brad from Portugal. So I don't know if it's pronounced Jorge or I don't know. I don't speak Spanish. Nick Smith, how you doing? Just in time. Email Max. I recognize that one. Jeremy, how you doing? Big D from Ohio, how you doing? Hey, Eric. Eric was just texting me. I'm like, stop texting me. I'm about to go live. You know, the guys from the Map Reading Challenge this year all got hooked up for Onyx Map, the Onyx Hunt app for their phone. So Eric just was getting that set up, and he was texting me. I'm like, awesome. I'm glad you're really enjoying it. But come on, I'm about to go live, brother. John Clapp, how you doing? David, everyone tuning in. Dan, Steve, how you guys doing? It's great to have everybody signing on and clicking on and tuning in and stuff like that. Looks like Jimmy and Frank. What's up, everybody? Okay, so we are getting rolling here. People are tuning in, and I'm excited to bring you this episode. And tonight's focus is going to be on tree stand. Originally, when I thought of the idea, I was going to focus on tree stand setups and placements and stuff. But as I was getting my materials ready this evening, I realized that so many of my viewers, so many are brand new to hunting. And so one thing I want to do kind of in the beginning is actually go over some compulsory stuff, some stuff that might be like no-brainers to your more experienced guys and girls out there. But some of the newer people might really benefit just from a few of the ideas I want to present. So how I'm going to do this is I've actually got some tree stands cluttering up my room over here so I can hold them up and give some manual physical examples. I'm also going to use my whiteboard to draw out some examples. A bunch of people are still signing on. And as you sign on, I just want to welcome everybody who's coming on from the text message alert that you're getting from Bowtech. If you want to get on that, you text the word WATCH to 313131. And as far as I know, they've been sending those out right at the beginning of these broadcasts. And that alerts people on that platform. And if you watch or follow my channel, if you click I guess it's a little bell icon next to the word subscribe, that's a notification icon, and that notifies you when I go live or when I do an upload. So if you haven't already clicked that notification on my YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. And especially if you're just coming in from that text thread and you haven't done that, well, you'll get notified when I do an upload that way. You won't get notified when I do an upload if you're on that text alert. So again, I want to welcome everybody, and as I get started, I want to cover a couple things. Everybody is getting super excited about the Map Reading Challenge. I know I am. I've been rolling out some episodes, and in fact, the last couple days, I posted the last 2 videos. Now all the teams are represented. I have the introduction to each team on the Map Reading Challenge. We got 4 teams competing. All these guys are competing for the grand prize of the Bowtech Range 6. They're also competing for one of these. Let's see if I can pick it up. It's sitting right here. This is my XOP Air Raid hang-on tree stand, and I just got to break it in this past weekend, and I'm going to be using that in a minute for a demonstration. But they are competing to get one of those. And so can you. You don't necessarily compete, but you have the opportunity to win yourself a Bowtech Range 6 and an XOP Air Raid hang-on tree stand. And I've got a lot of questions. When is this happening? When does the voting start? Because if you've been following the series, you know to get your name into that pool for the Bowtech Range 6, you have to vote for one of the guys on the Map Breeding Challenge. And in registering to do that, your name goes into the lottery. We're going to pull out one of those names and we're going to call it out live in November. So this bow is going to be won by one of you viewers in November, right before Thanksgiving. What I would like to do is, do a call to the winner in the live feed, on the Wednesday night live feed that we've been doing, and congratulate them right there on the phone. So when is all that going to take place? Well, I am hoping, God willing, it's going to start this Friday. I was talking to the one guy who's my contact from Bowtech, I believe it was yesterday, and we were talking about getting that whole web page developed where you can go and vote for these guys, and you could also view the uploads that I'll be doing on the Map Breeding Challenge. And if they're able to get it all set up right, we're going to try to make it go live on Friday. Now, I called him today. I didn't get him. He might even be out hunting. It is hunting season where he's at. And so when I find out for sure, I'm going to release a video probably on Friday, and I'm hoping that the video is to say, hey, voting is now open, so you can vote for your guy. And again, all you got to do to get to know these guys a little bit is watch those introduction videos I just posted. All of them are up now. All 4 teams are represented. You can meet each guy, get a little feel for him, see what guy you want to get behind. Now, moving forward, I have several other videos that are going to go up in the next, hopefully week. I have several competitions that I ran with these guys, which determine some very critical things for how things are going to play out in the airing of the Map Breeding Challenge. And so I'm going to air. I got to edit them. I'm trying to make the time to do it. It's hard within a stay-at-home dad of 4 kids, but I'm working on that. So hopefully I'll get those up, and then after those are done, begins the individual scout videos, and we're going to air 1 video a day for 12 consecutive days. Every guy is going to be going up one day after another in the order that they placed in one of my competitions. So we're going to roll that out, and I'll give another update on that next week. In fact, some of the guys are in a tied position, so I am going to pull names out of a hat to see where they lie in the rollout of the videos, and I'll probably be doing that live. Maybe I'll do it on next week's live show. So we've got a lot of fun stuff going on, and I just taking a peek over here. Right before I went live tonight, I was doing a little research because actually Andrew Penzi from Team Maryland, and he sent me a video yesterday. I think it was yesterday. He was talking about how to make money off of YouTube aside from the ads that they do, and one of the things that it talked about was the super chat, and so I was just trying to learn about it. If you look on the place where you can make a comment, and right below the line that you type on, there's a little $sign. People can actually make a donation right there if you're interested. You click on that and you can make a donation. You can leave a special message and it'll pop up and everyone will see it. So if you want to have a little competition amongst yourselves who can donate the most in one evening, hey, I'm not going to complain. But anyway, just pointing that out if anybody wants to get into that, because I don't actually make anything for doing all these videos, and I've shared a tremendous amount of time and information, and I've actually spent money on babysitters so that I could do this live show. So if anybody wants to help out with that and cover some of those costs, I am not going to complain. But that's enough of that. Let's get into talking about tree stands and tree stand placement. What I'm going to do is move over to here, and while I'm moving over to here where my whiteboard is, I'm going to remind you that if you have questions or comments, this is going out all over the place. And I'm a one-man show, a small-time operation. I'm just monitoring my Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. So when I get to answering questions, if you have a question, I need you to ask it there, because I'm not looking at all. This is going out all over the place. Facebook pages and everything else. I'm not monitoring those, so I will not get your question. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask or something you'd like to say, hopefully it's polite, then you have to do it on my Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. So make sure you head over to that. And when I do take questions, I do it near the end. I will make an announcement. It's time for questions. If you write a question right now, I'm never going to see it because there's people commenting like crazy on that thing. It'll get buried. So when it's time for question and answers, I will ask for it then, type it then, and use a question mark at the end because that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking at all these sentences there. I'm looking for a question mark, and then I just read it out loud. So go ahead and do that. All right, now I want to get started talking about a few rudimentary things, and I've got my whiteboard here. I'm going to start with ladder stands and just hit that, and then I'm going to talk about ladder sticks, you know, where they all connect together, and then I'm going to just talk a little bit about portable sticks, hang-on stands, and climber stands. And I just want to cover a few ideas in the setup process because those of you who are new maybe don't have a whole lot of experience at some of this, and I don't want you to go out with one of these types of stands not knowing what you're getting into, and then you're not ready to complete the job. So let me just draw this line here. Let's say this is a nice oak tree right here, and you've got yourself a brand new ladder stand, and you go out there to set it up. You need at least 2 other people with you. Ladder stands, and it'll probably say it in the instructions, you need like 3 people to set those up. Typically, and some, you know, check the instructions, some might say it differently, but what you'll generally do is you'll set the ladder up on the ground. So it's going to be like this, the ladder stand. You'll have it a distance away from the base of the tree. Depending on how tall it is will also depend partly on how far away from the base of the tree. And then what you guys are going to do is pick it up and you're going to walk this way, and as you're walking this way you're tilting it up into the air so it's going to end up on the tree. Now here's a couple things I just want you to think about when you're setting a ladder stand. And I'm going to use the red marker here just to help draw a distinction. If you set the bottom and it's too far away from the base of the tree, I mean, your platform, for one thing, is going to be on a bad angle, but a lot of these constructions may not be able to handle your weight if there's too much of a bow when you're going up here. So this could bow down while you're going up, and it could even break. So that is a caution I want to make when you're setting up a ladder stand. If you lean it on the tree and it's not in this position here, you guys need to pick it up and walk the base a little bit in. You don't want to be too far either, because then, you know, you're not going to have, it's going to be very difficult to climb. So you got to get a little bit of an angle when you're setting up a climber, and you need a couple people. I just want to mention that because, again, there could be some viewers who are watching right now who are new to hunting. They just ordered themselves a brand new ladder stand. They're all excited to set it up, and they're not even familiar with it. And there's going to probably be some other assemblage a lot of times with the platforms. So I just wanted to mention that. And I just want to get through this real quick and get to some of the more strategic stuff for actual hunting, but I just want to throw a few ideas out for people's safety. Okay, so the next thing is you have ladder sticks. So it's pieces that stick together and they go on the tree. You're going to benefit by a couple people because, you know, you can help hold them steady. And a lot of times, depending on the way the tree is, you can't just like put one on and then strap it to the tree and then take another and put it on and strap it to the tree and take another, because sometimes they won't fit together, especially when the straps on them might be pulled too tightly to the tree, and it might cause an angle that you can't slide this one on. So a lot of times what I do, and again, it's best if you have somebody helping you, there is a little bit of like a, let's just say it's like a V-shaped thing that's going to go against the tree. Let's say it's you're looking straight down from the top of the tree to the ground. It's going to lean against the tree right there, and then your strap is going to go around the whole unit. What I like to do, and again, you should double check with your instructions. A lot of times the instructions say they want you to assemble it and then walk it up, but it's really hard to balance it when you do that, in my opinion. What I like to do is I take the top ladder stick. So the stick that's going to be the highest on the tree, and I will lean it against a tree. I'll have all of my sticks lined up, and this V shape is right on the tree. I'll then slide it up, and I'll put the next one in. And if you have another person there that can help hold on, that's really important. Then we'll slide that up, and we'll put the next one in, and then the next one. And we basically actually slide it up the tree, and having 1 or 2 people helping you keep it all steady is best. The reason I started doing that way is because one time we tried to walk it up like the other thing, and we couldn't hold it. You know, just we lost it. I don't remember if it was a windy day, and one of the because of the weight of one, it bent the connection, and so it was a cheaper brand, but hey, that's what happened. So ever since then, I started to walk them up the tree. Now, once they're on the tree, this is the important part. You let's say that the ladders are, there's like a little connector there, the little V shape. Let's say you have a 20-foot ladder right here, and you've got your buddy holding it, and you got the strap around the tree. You get the bottom one strapped on, and here's what I recommend. A lot of them come with these types of straps, where it's just a strap, and you feed the other end in, and just like this. Let me just try to get this in there. My ending on this one's a tiny bit frayed, so it's not going through real smoothly. Imagine if I was hanging on a tree trying to do it. Okay, so it slides in, and then you just pull it as tight as you can, like that, and then it holds itself. I do not recommend, even if this is what it comes with, I don't recommend using these. Here is why. I've been in situations where even after the stick is all set up and you come back another day, those can loosen up a little bit. Even if you're pulling on them as tight as you can, it sometimes isn't even tight enough. That stick can still move. I recommend that you get yourself enough ratchet straps that you have at least one ratchet strap on each climbing stick. You put this around, and with the ratchet, you can make that as tight as you can, and it's not going anywhere. Obviously, you don't want to over tighten it depending on the construction. You don't want to cause bending or breaking within the construction of it, but you want it really firm so like it doesn't move on the tree. And that's going to be really helpful and important. So if you're standing at the base and your buddy's holding the ladder, you ratchet that first one on, you get your lineman belt up, you just take one step on so you can reach up to the next one, ratchet that one on, you ratchet your whole way up. And that's just something for you to consider. Those of you who have experience of it, maybe you've already experienced some of those things. I just want to mention it in case there's some new people out there. Here's an important thing I want to talk about real quick about the actual hang-on tree stand. So when you get to the top of your ladder, obviously you're going to put your tree stand on, and it's going to have a seat right there, and there's going to be a strap that goes around the tree. Most tree stands nowadays have two straps, and if you don't have a second strap, I'm going to encourage you to get one, and I want to talk about that right now. So I'm going to pick up my my air raid right here. This is an important thing I want to just mention because it can become a safety issue. So on this tree stand, this particular style has just a pull-tight cinch similar to what I was showing you for the ladder stick. It's not a ratchet strap. This actually works really well, and I like it. I don't feel the need to use a ratchet strap. This works well, but when you're setting up one of these, and I did a video on this the other day, you could always check that out on my channel. You put the top strap on, and then you actually stand up the platform, and you pull the top strap as tight as you can, and then you set the platform down. Now, this is the important thing I want to go over, especially if you don't have a bottom strap like this one actually comes with. When you step on this stand, it's going to really make it go flat. But when you're standing on the side of it, setting it up, you know, there might be, I'm just hitting the ceiling with this seat. Let me put that down. When it's like this, it might be up a little bit, even if you pushed it down. And when you put this strap on, if you are using a ratchet strap and you ratchet it too tight, it can cause it to go up like that as well. What you're creating is an unstable situation. So like when you're sitting down, it might actually come up a little bit because of the way you have your ratchet strap. And then when you go to stand up, it may move back down. So here's what I'm getting at. If you have a tree stand that only has one strap, I recommend you put a bottom strap on as well so that it doesn't kick off the tree when you step on it. You know, having that bottom strap is really important. But in that situation, I actually recommend this type of strap that I talked about before. The reason is you can get it tight enough to the tree so that it's not going to kick off, but you usually are not going to cause it to be too tight where it starts to come up. Like if you are ratcheting a ratchet strap on there and getting it tight as you can, that platform can come up a little bit and create an unfavorable situation. And some of you are thinking, oh yeah, I've done that. I've ratcheted the bottom on and that bottom's come up. And I'm going to correct that. Or if you are using a ratchet, don't over tighten it. So I just want to mention that for you beginners especially. And lastly, I want to talk about my climber. I have my climber here. I actually just took the seat off and threw it in the wash because it's, I mean, this climber is like 12 years old. It's holding up great, but I've never washed the seat before. And I was noticing, you know, it has a little bit of an odor. I also have a video on how I put molly straps on my Lone Wolf here, and I have asked the XOP people to give me a climber, and I think they're out of them right now because I want to do another video on setting up a hand climber because I've been listening to people talk about climbing trees in their hand climbers, and I'm like, these people are not doing it right, and it's causing them to have some pain right down here, and so I want to do a video on that. But I'm going to wait and see if they give me one before I do that, because if XOP gives me a climber, I want to do it with that. Anyway, this is my climber that I've been using for a long time, and I want to just mention that when I put a climber on a tree, and I have videos on this, you know, at the base of the tree, I have it so this is angled up a little bit. But here's something I want to mention for you new people, because you might be wondering if you're using a climber like this and you're climbing up a tree. Obviously, the tree typically tapers out as it goes higher. So I'm going to make an exaggerated drawing here just to make my point. Okay, so it's wider at the base here than up here where you're going to actually be sitting for a hunt. And it might not be as noticeable when you're actually in the tree stand, you know, or when you're climbing a tree that, you know, the base is that much wider than at the top. I'm just drawing that bigger to make sure you can see. So anyway, what you want is your tree stand is going to have an angle down at the base, because when you get up to the top, there's a smaller diameter here. However, sometimes with the hand climber part, I will actually loosen this. I'm tethered to the tree with my safety harness. Don't ever use a climber or any tree stand if you're not tethered to the tree with a harness system. But what I'll do is I'll actually pop this and tighten it up as I'm getting up higher, because sometimes it'll start to get uncomfortably pointed down or something like that. And I just want to mention that to you new hunters. Don't be afraid to make an adjustment on your seat part if it's doing that to you as you're climbing up. The platform, however, I usually set it as about, you know, not always as high as I possibly can on the ground, but I definitely have an up angle so that when I'm up, you know, I usually like to get up around 18 feet so that when I'm up there, it's about level. So those are a couple things I just wanted to mention for some of you new hunters. And now let's get into some other stuff. I want to talk about, you know, how do you face your tree stand on a tree, and why do you pick that direction? That's what I want to go over now. And I also want to talk about strategies for placing your stand in relation to deer movement patterns or even along a field. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm just knocking over my other tree stand here. The first thing I want to do is talk about the angle of your tree stand, the way that it faces on the tree in relation to, let's talk about deer trails. So in this scenario, let's pretend we're aerial view. We're looking down, straight down from a satellite image at the deer trails and the tree that we're placing our tree stand in. So our tree that our tree stand is going to be in is right here, and the major deer trail that we are interested in is right there. Before I draw this, I want to ask you, the viewer, where would you put your tree stand? Would you face it this way, this way, this way, this way? Which way would you face your tree stand if the primary trail you're hunting is right here? Now, there's a lot of people who might say, I would put my tree stand right like this. And let me tell you why that's a bad idea. The deer movement is from here to here. So if your tree stand is facing your primary trail, you are silhouetted on the tree when the deer is coming. So the tree's here and you're out here, and any little bit of movement is going to really stand out. Like if the tree's right behind me, say this is the tree right here and the deer trail is out here, if I move in the littlest bit, you know, or if I go to pick up my bow, all this movement is silhouetted. The tree's behind me, the deer's coming this way or that way, and they could spot me. So I hope you see, especially you new hunters, this is not the ideal, you know, point or placement of your tree stand. So what I would suggest actually is setting the tree stand on one side of the tree or other with the trail to the side. And the reason why is, now if a deer's coming down the trail this way and the tree's right to my back, any little bit of movement with my head or anything, the tree is right behind me. That movement doesn't stand out dramatically as if I was silhouetted on the side of the tree, like in that scenario. So when you're preparing your hunts and you're picking out your trees and you're picking out where I want to hunt, a lot of people are hunting travel corridors. Deer are moving along this trail is hammered. I want to sit this trail. I put a trail camera up on this trail. I'm getting deer movement all day long. This is the trail I want to hunt. Now, do you face it this way or do you face it this way? Well, that's going to partly depend on which way the deer move and the time of day you're going to hunt it, and if you're right-handed or left-handed. So let's talk about a right-handed hunter for a second here. And let's ignore the direction that the deer are moving for one moment. If you're a right-handed hunter, you are holding your bow with your left hand. So ideally, a right-handed hunter wants to face this way because his left hand, all he has to do, I got the wall here in my way, all he has to do, like if the deer's coming, he just has to raise his bow, pull back. I'll mention this, I've mentioned it before, I always wait until a deer's head goes behind a tree. So like if this is my tree stand location and there's a tree right here, as the deer approaches, as soon as its head goes behind that tree, that's when I draw my bow, so it doesn't see my movement. And so anyway, all the hunter has to do is raise and draw, wait for the deer to walk into his sight window and take the shot. So for a right-handed shooter, and if the main trail is over here, they want that trail typically on their left-hand side. Now let's say, okay, I don't have any trees. This is all wide open. You know, it's in the woods, and there's trees here and there, but when the deer gets close, there's no trees right in here that I can use as a block for my motion to draw my bow back. Well, in that situation, even if you're a right-handed hunter, I would place the tree stand on this way. And I've done that before. I have videos on it. And I've had to turn all the way around in the tree stand to take the shot off of this side. But the deer never saw me because the tree is blocking my movement. And what I actually did, because I intentionally did that, this was actually one of my very first map reading challenges that I ever did. I believed that the deer were going to come this way in the morning. And so I set my tree stand facing the opposite direction, because if I was over here and I had to do any movement, the deer could see me real easily. And I didn't want to be spotted. So I had a fat tree, which helps. And the tree forked right up by where I was sitting. In those situations, you can sometimes look through the fork. But this fork was actually a little too wide and high. I still had to look around the tree. Anyway, it's getting to be daylight. It was a morning hunt. I stood up and I faced the direction that the deer were coming from. And I was watching and I spotted the deer with plenty of time. I got my bow ready. I got my video camera ready. And I shot the deer. Successful hunt. And the tree was my shield. They couldn't see me moving. I had to take the video camera all the way around the tree. And I was moving all around to get the camera in position. And I left some of that footage in the video. Actually, if I think of it, I will put a link in the description section of this video after it's going to post after it's all done here, after the live show's over. And I'll try to remember to go back on there and put that in there. So anyway, the tree was blocking all my movement, and then when the deer stepped out over here, I got a nice 20 yards broadside shot, and the deer ran about 45 yards and died. So when you're thinking about tree stand placement, this is an idea I wanted to present to you guys and girls. But here is a new idea to throw in the mix. Let's keep the same trail. And let's say, self-filmed hunting has become a huge thing. It seems like everybody's filming themselves now. The hunting videos on YouTube are saturated. It's you guys who are recording videos and putting them up. No, it is really hard to get anywhere with this because it's just so saturated and it's just tough. Point is, a lot of people are filming their hunts. Now, let's take that right-handed hunter. And here is the tree stand. Now for me, when I set up my video camera arm, I always try to place it, if possible, on my right-hand side, over here. So the trail's on that side, remember? The video camera's over here. The reason I do that is I'm holding my bow with my left hand, and I can do all my video work. I have a remote, so I can pan and zoom and all that with this hand, and then when it's time to shoot, I can let go, draw back, and make my shot. If the camera arm's over here, then I have to take the string of my bow and hold the bow this way. Now I'm working the camera over here. Now I let go of that. I got the handle again. Now I got to, it makes it a lot harder if the camera arm's on your left-hand side as a right-hand hunter. So, with that in mind, if your camera arm's over here with your camera, by the time the deer comes over here and offers you a broadside shot, you as the hunter are blocking the view of the camera. That is a very big problem. And sometimes you can't always feed the camera around behind you, and now you're working it with the left hand again anyway, letting go of the bow. It becomes very difficult. So here's an idea to try to incorporate everything for those of you who are hunting in a situation like this and you're trying to film yourself. So what I try to do is I give myself a little bit more of a diagonal angle toward the deer trail. And that way my camera arm that's out here, okay, and I'm on the stand, when the deer is, let me just move this deer up a little bit. So if the deer is right here giving me the broadside shot I need, my camera can sometimes, if I have it all set up right, can still video the deer around me. I can take my shot and I can do all my video work still. My camera's here, I bring it out here. It's a little hard sometimes to see that flip open screen. You almost have to lean back a little bit to make sure, yeah, I got it in the right place. And I take my shot. So by angling the tree stand like on a 45 almost, I can still keep my body up against the tree enough to not be silhouetted and pull all this off. And you just have to, you have to, play with it a little bit and get it just right. So, and here's another thing I want to mention when you're tree stand hunting. Every time I'm tree stand hunting, the second I see a deer, I stand up and I try to get in tight to the tree, just so I'm not silhouetted. And I also pick up my bow, obviously. Like I almost always am seated when I'm hunting. Very rarely do I stand up. I do, like if I'm hunting for 4 hours, I might be standing for about 15 minutes of that. And the reasons I do that is, one, I want to keep my muscles as rested as possible, and I want to minimize movement. And I find that if I'm standing, it's just too easy to move around if you're standing. If you're sitting there, you're not wiggling around on your legs or swaying. A lot of us tend to naturally sway a little bit when we're standing. Like if you pay attention the next time you're standing somewhere, you're actually going to be swaying a little bit. It's very hard to remain perfectly motionless. You actually have to try to do it. If you're not trying to do it, you actually are moving a little bit. And that little bit of movement could be enough. If you're sitting down, you're not like fighting to keep your balance like that. So, you could also lean against a tree. So you're minimizing movement, you're saving, energy. When you get buck fever, and those of you who haven't experienced it yet, it's going to rock you. Your body is going to be shaking. If you adjust the weight on your legs a little bit, your leg's going to start jumping. And so in order to help you, you need to stay as rested as possible. If your muscles are tired, it becomes harder to control. And so, again, I like to stay seated. When a deer's coming, let's say I see the deer out here, I'm going to stand up. I got my bow ready. I got the camera going. And then by the time the deer's about here, or even before that, I'm going to point the camera where I'm going to try to get my shot. And I'm not going to be doing all this movement anymore. And then I'll just, if I have a tree here, which I typically will, otherwise I'm going to set up on this side of the tree and just make it work. And I'll talk about that in a second. But when the deer goes behind the tree, that's when I draw. And now I'm just standing still at full draw, waiting for the deer to reach the spot where I'm going to take the shot. If I'm going to be on this side of the tree, obviously the camera arm is going to be on this side. And again, this is especially for those of you who are getting into the self-filming. I will typically, let me just clean this up a little bit for a second. Give ourselves a nice big tree here. This is our tree. And this is our tree stand. Let's say I have to set up on this side because I got no trees over here to, really block the deer's view when I go to full draw. What I will typically do is I will place the video camera totally on the side of the tree. Like I'm here, it's 90 degrees over here, and that way I can video the deer when it's coming, and I can just turn the camera and point it there. And the reason why I have it there and not like closer to me is because this can cause an obstruction to your shot if this is sticking off of the tree too far, depending on the angle you get. So I keep the video camera arm out of the way. There has been a time where I didn't get an 8-pointer because my video camera arm was a little too far over and it blocked I couldn't draw back. My quiver would have hit or even my bow would have hit the camera arm from where I was shooting. So in this situation, when the deer's like out here, I'm coming to full draw, you know, I might even angle my body so my bow's pointed this way, come to full draw, and as it's walking by, I will slowly follow it until it gets broadside. And that slow movement that I'm doing with the deer is usually, it's slow enough that they don't pick up on me. And so these are some ideas. Again, I threw in the filming stuff because there's a lot of people who are getting into that. And those of you who have tried it know it is very difficult. Self-filming is not an easy thing, especially if you're trying to capture it on a video camera, on a standalone arm. Those of you who are thinking about getting into it, especially if you're new at hunting, you know, just be prepared to have things be made a lot more difficult if you're going to try to film, because it's not easy, folks. All right. I have something else I want to talk about now. I'll just draw a couple deer trails in red for a second here. Let's say these are 2 deer trails, and this is something I always look for when I'm hunting. So there are good deer trails, and then there's a lot of people who will just set up on a good deer trail, and that's not usually enough for me. I want to maximize my chances, and so I will usually, when I'm scouting, follow that good deer trail until it hits another good deer trail. There might be some faint deer trails here and there, but I want a highway intersecting with a highway. Think about car traffic. When you have 2 highways coming together, you got a ton of cars all the time. They got traffic lights there. If it's a major road, not a highway, they got traffic lights there. Then you think of like an old country road with an intersection, and you know, there could be a couple cars throughout the day here. Now think about deer movement volume. You know, especially if you're new to hunting, you want to maximize your chances. You want to be where most of the deer are going to be and try to get a shot at one of them. And so being in an intersection, like deer that are over here for whatever reason, and they want to get over here, well, they're going to be coming along this trail. And deer that are hanging out over here that eventually want to get over here, well, they're going to come along that trail. And this right here is the meeting point. So depending, let's say the wind's blowing the wrong way for you that day, the wind's coming this way, all the deer that would be coming from this way are winding you, but you still got a chance because you're hunting this intersection where they're meeting up right here. So I like to look for that. But again, where do you pick your tree stand location in relation to one of these? So you could pick a tree here, 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 here. I mean, there's trees all over you could pick. What is your preferred tree, and how do you set up on it? Well, for me personally, I like this tree and this tree the most, and I'm going to set up like I talked about, like this or like this. Because most of my movement is in this direction, and again, the tree. Now, let me just throw this in there too. You have to understand what I'm talking about, because I hunt almost entirely out of one of these, a climbing tree stand on public lands. Where there are exceptions to this is those of you who have your own land can do whatever you want, and you can put up hang-ons and leave them there. You have no worries of someone taking them. You could set it up anywhere, and you could set your tree stand facing this way as long as you have cover. So let's say, I mean, you could have a cedar tree right here. You know, obviously the deer's not going to, if the deer's coming in this direction and there's a cedar tree right here, they're not going to see you silhouetted. Or if there's there's a tree with some branches here and there, if you don't make the mistake of mowing everything down or cutting everything down. Let me grab these real quick. I brought these little, just drop my marker. So when you are trimming, like on public land, you're not allowed to. So I don't really ever get to use these. Sometimes I'll use some string and tie a branch out of the way for the hunt. And I've talked about that in some of my videos. You got a little handsaw and a little trimmer here. If you want to do any trimming, don't use any equipment bigger than this because you don't want to be cutting. I mean, you know, there are people who cut entire trees down. There are people, let me put these down for a second. They'll go up and, oh, this tree's in my way, I'm cutting it down. Try to avoid that, in my opinion. If you can just trim a few of the little tiny branches off of that tree that are maybe blocking the view a little bit. When I used to guide in Illinois, there were guys who would come out and we would have, you know, little shooting lanes picked out where you can make an effective shot, but we left as much cover up as possible so you weren't silhouetted, the deer wasn't like easily seeing your movement. And these guys would come in there with these saws and stuff and just mow everything down. So it was like just wide open space. Guys, girls, you don't want that. You want cover. So if you're doing a hang on, if you can have cover even in the tree that you're in, like I was looking at a tree recently for a hang on. Let me just draw it over here. So you have, it was an oak tree, and there were branches all over this thing in every direction, and there were leaves everywhere. And I thought, man, it was public land, so I couldn't trim anything. But if I could, and so I didn't end up using the tree. But if I was the landowner and I could hang a tree stand in this tree, I would cut one branch, that one right there, so that I could put my hang on. And the platform of the hang on is just about touching that branch. This branch here had leaves all over it, and my seat's right there. So deer that were under me, if they were coming in this direction, this was blocking their view of me. My silhouette was totally broken up, and all I would have had to do is wait for it to pass on either side of that branch to take my shot. And so the point is, if you have cover, like in this situation, if I had cover like this, well, I would not mind pointing my tree stand like at that tree. For me, as a public land hunter using a climber, which a lot of you are or will be, you know, you're going to be on a tree with no branches so you can get your climber up in it. And so that's when this sideways direction becomes your friend, you know, so you're not silhouetted. And then you can take your shot at the intersection there. Wow, I can't believe how late it's gotten already. I'm going to have to switch over to answering questions because I've only got a few minutes left before I have to get off for the next show. And so I'm going to come back over here. If you have questions, make sure you are firing them out right now. Let me just tilt this down a little bit. So I am back over to my computer. Fire away. If you have any questions, if you've asked any before, re-ask them now because I did not see them. So let's see here. Wow, you guys are really chatting it up in this thing, man. Let's see. I'm looking for question marks. There was one guy up there said, anyone else from New York? All right, I don't see any questions, so maybe you guys are good to go. Oh, here you go. Do you like climbing stands better than hang-on stands? The answer to that is yes, I do. Let me just move over a little bit so I'm centered. So an example, I went out on a hunt the other day. It was very hot, and to climb the tree with my climber, you know, it's just a matter of going, you know, moving the arm thing up and then the leg thing up. I got up there, I was done. I could take my time to try to not break a bad sweat, and I sat down in the tree and I pulled up my bow and I set up my video camera. When you're using a hang-on, like for me, I have to be portable. So if I'm going to bring in the climbing sticks, it takes a little more energy to be, I mean, you got the lineman's belt, but you're still holding on to the tree. You're pulling each one as tight as you can. You go up to the next, you're pulling that tight. Now you're holding, you know, your hang-on stand, and you're putting that on, you're pulling that tight and all this. I just feel like it's a little more physically exerting to set up a hang-on stand than a climber. And because you're constantly doing all these, you know, pulling things tight, you got to get everything tight in order for it to be safe, you know. And you know, you've got your lineman. In those situations, I'm using a lineman belt, and you're working that up a tree. If you got a branch, now you got to stop and then hook your tether up above that, take your lineman belt off, climb up above that, put your lineman belt back on, take the tether off. So there's a lot of that. When you're using the climber, you tether yourself to the tree, you move that up, move your seat up, move your platform up, move your tether up, and you're just like working your way up the tree, and then you're done. Now, let me back out and say, if you have the opportunity to set up a tree stand and leave it, by far I would prefer that, because then all your gear's there. You're not carrying. I mean, my tree stand and my backpack, I mean, I'm carrying like 40 to 50 pounds of gear, no exaggeration, every time I go out on a hunt. I mean, by the time hunting season is 2 weeks in, my legs are like steel. I mean, just because I'm hiking these hills with all this weight on my back. And so if I could just leave my stand there and just go in and just walk up the sticks, you know, just work my lineman belt up, well, that would be the best. But if you have to be mobile, I strongly prefer the climbing stand, or yeah, the climbing stand. Okay, any tips on hunting in heat? Dave Murphy. Yes, Dave, I would say bring a change of clothes. When I walk in and, you know, if I get really sweaty and I get set up, I actually swap out my clothes. Like my shirt is like drenched. I'll take that off, and I'll usually have a Ziploc bag, like a big, huge Ziploc. I'll just throw everything in that, zip it closed, and I'll put a new shirt on and everything. And I also carry a stick of, you know, hunting deodorant, you know, the antiperspirant stuff with no odor, and I will reapply it when I get to the stand. You know what I mean? And I try to cool down. And so that's one thing. Of course, if you're still sitting in the heat and you're just dripping with sweat, that's not easy. I mean, you can wipe the sweat off. Sweat itself doesn't have odor. I talked about this in a video I recently did. It's the bacteria in your hair, and mainly like in areas that aren't going to get dried out easily. Like your head can dry out and then you're fine, but your armpits can be sweaty all day long and not dry out, and that's where your bacteria and your odors come from. So, I mean, trying to keep those reapplying the deodorant, you could even do that a couple times during the hunt if it's a long hunt. But those are some types of things you can do, swapping out the sweaty clothes for dry clothes. And if it's still just going to be, like, say, 90 degrees, just try to be still. Also, if you can position your tree stand so you're not in the sunlight, like if you're facing the opposite direction of the sun, that can be really helpful, because just sitting in the sun can really heat you up. But if you're in the shade, even if there's no breeze, that little bit of shade can help. So if you can incorporate that, the time of day you're going to be hunting and which way the sun's going to be, that could be very helpful. Here's something I wanted to mention when I was over there and I'm not thinking of. Also be conscious of where your shadow is hitting. So if the deer are moving out here and the sun's behind you, well, you might think, oh, that's great. If they look this way, they're going to be blinded by the sun. But let's say they're not looking in your direction. You get up to grab your bow and stuff. They might see your shadow on the ground and get spooked. So be mindful when you're hunting. Look for where your shadow is in relation to where the deer are going to be moving, and be thinking of that when they're coming in. Like, okay, which way are they coming from and where's my shadow, so that I don't spook these deer just by moving. Okay, one more question and then I'm going to have to probably wrap up. Do you use flashlight to come into woods in the dark? Brad. Yes, Brad. I used to not, but now I've had a lot of encounters with black bears, and you know, for where I hunt, it's a safety issue. You really need to have the light on, because if you know, I used to walk up on deer sometimes, you know, without the light, and then they would take off when I get close to them, or not. But from a safety perspective, you don't want to walk up on a bear and spook a bear, especially if it's a mother with cubs. And so I walk in with my light on, and I find that, you know, now that I do that, I was always afraid of spooking deer, but I find that it doesn't really spook them as much, especially early in the season. But deer often don't associate danger with something with headlights. I mean, obviously they run from cars because, you know, or they get hit by a car, but then they calm right back down. When a car goes by, you know, they might get nervous if they're near the road, or they might not, but they calm back down. So actually, sometimes a flashlight is not not a big game changer or spooker. I mean, yeah, the game might be spooked because you're making a ton of noise, but I use it. I use it, and it's a safety thing for me now. Okay, guys, girls, everybody out there. I guess I'll take one last question, and then I got to stop. How do I find bucks in daylight? Well, that all depends. If you're hunting pressured land, it's very possible that the bucks will not be moving in daylight, and that's period, until the rut. And so if you want to find bucks in daylight, even if you're not hunting pressured land, it's possible that the deer might have a habit of only being nocturnal, or the bucks moving nocturnally in your area. You may need to wait for the rut and hope that they get up on their feet chasing does. And it's as simple as that. There's no guarantee that bucks will be on their feet in daylight. You know, you could run trail cameras everywhere, and everything you get is all nocturnal, and it could just be their pattern, and they might just be smart, or whatever. The other thing you could try doing, there's a lot of hunters that believe that the deer will get up and start milling around and moving within an hour of dark, even bucks, and they'll just stay close to their bedding area. So what you need to do in those scenarios is, one, you need to identify a buck's core bedding area, and two, in order to hunt that deer, you need to give yourself a few hours to stalk to a position where you can get a shot not far from his bedding area. This means, I mean, you might have to take an hour to move 40 yards and make no noise and have the wind in your favor. Bottom line is, it is not easy, and it's going to take work. So anyway, that's going to do it for me tonight. I got to close up shop here because we're getting right near the hour. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Every week I think like maybe I'll end in like a half hour, but it ends up going longer. So I guess I have more to say than I realize sometimes. So next week, I have not even picked a topic for next week yet, although somebody recently asked me to do a video on how I balance hunting and family life, you know, having all the kids. So maybe that'll be a part of the theme next week. There's a lot of you out there who have families, and that's a challenge this time of year, so that's an important topic that maybe I can touch on. If you have any other big topics, email me in the next day or so, and if it fits into this whole strategy thing, I will try to incorporate that, and I will post it on my channel what the topic will be once I get it figured out. Anyway, that's it. That's going to do it for me, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, and God bless you, and have a great week. If you get out hunting, good luck. Or God bless, or whatever. All that awesome stuff. Bye-bye.